Hello and welcome to the Bell Shakespeare 2022 season launch. I'm James Evans, Associate Director at Bell Shakespeare. Let me first acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which we meet here. I'm on Gadigal land, and I pay my respects and acknowledge the elders and the traditional owners of all of the lands on which you meet, elders past and present. I am joined here by some shining lights of Bell Shakespeare 2022, those who are going to have a huge impact on our program next year. And of course, first of all, Artistic Director Peter Evans is here. Actor Harriet Gordon-Anderson is here. Actor-Director Janine Watson is here. And composer, writer, and performer Laura Murphy is here as well. Hi, everyone. Welcome.
Hello.
Good evening, James.
Hi.
Hello, friends.
This
Hello.
is very exciting, friends. We're talking about 2022. We're talking about actually getting back into theatres, live theatre. We've just started tasting a few freedoms here in Sydney now, and our friends around the country, we miss them. Hopefully we'll be able to see them all very soon. But Peter, tell me, what was 2021 like for you as the leader of a theatre company in Australia, a second year of COVID?
Well, look, it was I was just reflecting on that today. It sort of was harder than last year in a way, probably because we made quite a lot of work this year and didn't get to show it to anyone, in the case of Hamlet, or we got it showed to only a fraction of the audience we hoped to with Midsummer Night's Dream. And then there was other activities similar to last year that we just didn't even get off the ground. That we might talk about some of that later this evening. So in a way it was kind of harder, but in other ways it was easier because I think we could feel last year was so kind of unknown and felt existential, I think, for a lot. And then the support that our audience gave us and our friends gave us and our colleagues gave us meant that by the end of the year, I was kind of pretty moved actually, and felt, oh no, this is not an existential problem. This is actually we're going to get through this. However, it meant that this year, I think I probably was overly optimistic about the way the year was going to roll out. So I felt kind of in the head a little more this year as we went into the work. And it was really near the end of Midsummer Night's Dream when things started to lock down and things started to get tricky. So it felt more of a roller coaster. However, the same thing happened. The kind of key people around the company and within the company are kind of so supportive and robust that, again, I felt very moved and very lucky to be part of the company and to work with this company and to have such extraordinary friends and audience. And so although it was sad and at times very bumpy, the bigger picture was rather beautiful, I think.
Yeah, that's great. And lots of hope for the future. Of course, what we want to do and what we want to get back to is hiring great artists to make great work. And I mean, that's what we do. And we've got three of them here today, freelance artists. It was obviously another tough year for freelance artists. Janine, how did you go this year?
Oh, look, I'm similar to Pete, actually. Like when we first locked down last year, I was pregnant and was very happy to go into the cocoon.
That's right.
And, I'd already dropped the gig. I sort of had a lot of work I'd had to give up, funnily enough, because I was pregnant and due. And so I agree with Pete on that. I'm the same. I think it felt existential, but it also felt like a necessary state of being. But this year I was working on the dream and I was just starting to get back into work after having my daughter. And the assistant directing was the first gig that I'd had since since having her
Yeah.
first full-time gig, and it was really exciting, and there was a lot of momentum. And you know, even on the first day of rehearsals, we had the 1.5 meter lines on the tables to separate us.
That's
around
right.
and I was like, oh wow, we're still there.
Yeah.
Yes, of course we're still there, you know. Still at 1.5 meter distance around the reading table. And then 5 or 6 weeks later, it was the storm clouds came back.
Yeah, but you know, it's interesting, and I think suddenly, you know, the past recedes so quickly, doesn't it? And we're going to look back on all this, and it will seem like a dream. It will seem like so long ago. Laura, how did you go in 2021?
2021, yeah, it was quite interesting. Like so many people, I was rehearsing a show. We were choreographing the very last number. This is for Cry Baby, the musical. We were literally doing the last number of the show, and the lyrics for that song are "Nothing bad is ever going to happen again." So there we are, you know, jazz hands, box step, nothing bad's ever going to happen again, while tears are rolling down our face because we just got word that the show was cancelled, and we all had to go home after that. So that was hugely disappointing, because I think a lot of us, we're optimistic about 2021. This is a year we're going to make up for 2020 and have an amazing year, and so many balls were rolling, and it, you know, it came to a grinding halt. But that's an excellent impetus to write and create and and finish. Actually, more importantly, 2020 was definitely about creation for me. I definitely had the existential crisis of what have I left in this world, and so I started creating and writing lots of new things. And so this lockdown, I was like, well, I'll finish those things. So I've been in the process of finishing, which isn't as fun as creating, let's be honest. The editing part is not as fun, and like trying to make it good is the least fun part. Dreaming of what it could be is the fun part, and that was 2020. So I really knuckled down and was trying to be as productive as possible, and use my anxiety towards being a workaholic.
That's amazing. Thanks, Laura. Harriet, how about you? Are you okay?
I'm okay. Thanks, Jimmy. I think it's a funny one, isn't it? I think, you know how you get your heart broken for the first time and you really lean into it, and you write bad poetry, and it's, you know, the greatest heartbreak that's ever happened to anyone. That was my experience of last lockdown. We packed up the show that we'd had 12 shows of Hamlet, and then we had this kind of communal grieving, I suppose, for it closing too soon, and then I quickly ran away. My mum lives in a rural setting, and I locked down with her, and I just looked at the ocean every day, and I really lent into being an emo, heartbroken. I felt like my heart was broken.
Of course.
And that felt important, and it was very productive and useful, and I'm glad that I did it. But this time round felt very different. I mean, for starters, we stayed in touch, the Hamlet cast. We have been trying to maintain some sort of momentum, and that I have found incredibly useful, and it has kept my hooks in normal life, so to speak. And even if it's just a walk around the block and a coffee with someone else outside or whatever, I felt like I've been able to maintain some semblance of reality this lockdown, which I think will inevitably help us get back into the rehearsal room soon and keep going, rather than feeling like we need to start from zero again and hurl ourselves out of the pit. So it's been truly okay, personally speaking.
That's great, Harriet. And, you know, we're so glad to be able to turn the page on that year, and Peter, talk about 2022, which in many ways is one of the biggest years in terms of programming in Bell Shakespeare's history. I mean, you've absolutely thrown the kitchen sink at 2022, and I can't wait to talk about all the things you've got in store. But first of all, a show that you need to present in Sydney, Melbourne, and Canberra. That's been a long time coming. What have you got planned for us in slot number 1?
Well, as you know, this is the presence of Harriet here. We're gonna put Hamlet on. We're gonna give it
We really are.
We're going to do it. It's not a dream, and we're going to give it its full. Let it reach its potential. As Harry alluded to, we've rehearsed it twice now. And this time we pretty much knew most of the time we were rehearsing that it probably wasn't going to get on. We were optimistic, but we knew it probably wasn't going to get on. The advantage was that we were even more of an ensemble this time. And as Harry's alluding to, we've stayed sort of doing other work as an ensemble over the last couple of months. So there's been some real silver linings to that particular project. I feel that we've got a kind of deeper group and we've been able to go deeper into the play. I mean, I do thank the Lord that I work with Shakespeare and with that play in particular, because revisiting something which will be the third time is not actually is a real pleasure and a real privilege actually to kind of get another crack at it and just go deeper in it. And this last time we weren't really changing much. It was a very similar to the production. We're still set in the 60s. It's still sort of about glamour and grief, and it's still kind of focused on the young people. But I think we were able to go deeper and find more in it, and I'm looking forward to doing that again next year as we finally get to share it and do that final step, which is exploring it in front of an audience properly.
Everything you spoke about, Pete, in terms of feeling incredibly moved the first time round with the support and the humanity and the connection that really came to the fore with the first wave of lockdown, and then knowing how important that has been and focusing on that in the second wave. I feel very grateful. What better bedrock to come to a play like this than from collective grief and collective community and desperation to have weddings together again and funerals together again. And I don't think I've ever felt so emotionally raw and desperate to pour into such an incredible text as Hamlet.
I think that's right, Harry. I think that's beautifully put too, because one of the things that I remember noting last year is that Hamlet's not allowed to grieve. Ophelia's not allowed to grieve. Laertes isn't allowed to grieve. That the politics and the generation that's controlling Elsinore don't let these young people grieve, and it drives them all mad. Their grief drives them mad, and I think we've all touched on that in the last couple of years, and can experience a little bit of what it is when our ceremonies and our processes get taken away from us. I think it's so great to be working on a play that I mean, these are aspects of the play I don't think I fully understood before. There are things about the play that I can see more clearly than I ever could have if we hadn't been through what we've been through, which is fascinating.
Isn't that amazing? I mean, you can say that about all Shakespeare, can't you? Every stage and step of your life, you learn something new because of what you've been through. Harriet, by the time we come back to rehearsal on this show, you will have been steeped in this character for almost 3 years. I mean, you were cast in March, April 2019. You've had all that time to reflect and think about it. How do you keep that performance fresh and alive?
Or do you not think about it?
Haven't started the third attempt yet. I just again, I sound a bit like a broken record, but people say you're lucky if you get to play this role once in your life. And to be able to revisit it and pick on new little things, and the time that I've had to really get to know him, and be able to put on the skin of Hamlet and move around in it when it's helpful, and with varying success, take it off and put it in a drawer when needed. It's pretty amazing. He's not the most cheerful chap to have around, but I'm getting better at being able to compartmentalize living my life in between shows, and still looking around at the experiences I'm having over the last 2 years and thinking, I could, that's useful, like remember that, and I'm hoping that the performance will only benefit from that time.
I think that's really interesting. I mean, you'll remember, Jimmy, in the rehearsal room when it started to get kind of clear that we probably weren't going to get on. We certainly weren't going to get on when we thought we were going to. That Harry just kind of pulled back slightly and didn't quite kind of allow herself to go as deeply into the places, just as a kind of self-preservation. But it also meant there was a kind of lightness and a kind of ease that I think was kind of great for rehearsals as well, that you normally don't get. You normally, as everyone on this call knows, once you're going, there's an opening night there.
There's a deadline.
You don't get. Whereas it was kind of beautiful. We all just sat back a little bit and were able to kind of look at it from different angles, which was kind of beautiful, I thought.
Yeah, I love that.
That felt necessary to not be a puddle on the floor or just start yelling at everyone for no reason.
Harriet, can you share with us a little piece from Hamlet?
I could give it a go. Right, I'm going to do a poem from Hamlet. I have of late, but wherefore I know not, lost all my mirth, forgone all custom of exercises, and indeed it goes so heavily with my disposition that this goodly frame, the earth, seems to me a sterile promontory. This most excellent canopy, the air. Look you, this brave o'erhanging firmament, this majestical roof fretted with golden fire, why, it appears no other thing to me than a foul and pestilent congregation of vapors. What a piece of work is a man! How noble in reason, how infinite in faculties, in form and moving, how express and admirable. In action, how like an angel. In apprehension, how like a god. The beauty of the world, the paragon of animals. And yet, to me, what is this quintessence of dust? Man delights not me, no, nor woman neither. Did that come through okay?
Oh yeah.
Stunning.
Yeah, that was beautiful.
Beautiful, Harriet. What a stunning performance. Don't miss Hamlet, Sydney, Melbourne, Canberra from March to May 2022. Peter, one of the great things about next year is that Bell Shakespeare will finally have its own space, will have its own theatre, a 300-seat, very flexible space that you've called the Nutshell. And very generously, we've received a contribution from the Nielsen family, and we're calling it the Nielsen Nutshell for that reason. And to launch that space, Peter, you've got something very special planned for us.
I do. And I guess that's been one of the things that's been good about this year is this a new home, or in room, as that we call it, we're finally getting, which I guess is one of the reasons this is one of our biggest seasons, 2022, that we've ever done, because we quite clearly see this as one of the significant times in the company's history since John founded the company. It was a dream of his, obviously, to have a home and have our own rehearsal spaces and workshop and have a little studio. We thought that maybe it was going to happen at the end of the 90s, and then it started to look pretty good, 2009-10, when I joined the company full time. And over the last decade, it's been on the horizon, and now it's not just on the horizon; it's right there.
Yeah.
So the Nielsen Nutshell is massive for us. I've called it the Nutshell. Actually, that same scene that Harry did the speech from. It's from that scene. We have two major texts of of Hamlet, and it's actually not in one of them, famously, but there's a little bit where he's talking to his two school friends, and Hamlet says, he says, I could be bounded in a nutshell and count myself a king of infinite base. And it felt like a good name for a theatre, a place of the imagination and a place of infinite space. So it's the Nielsen nutshell, and we thought we'd better open it with something, and something a bit special. And so what we're going to do is the cast of Hamlet and I, including you, Jimbo, we're going to take scenes, I guess broadly speaking, scenes I like.
Yes.
Stuff I like.
Yeah. Pete's favorites.
Yeah. And we're going to whittle it down from about 120 hours to 90 minutes.
Yeah.
And I'm going to host an evening in the theatre. We're going to set up the theatre on three sides and a thrust stage. But for you aficionados out there, it's going to be a little bit like a Tudor indoor theatre. It's very intimate, and we're going to do scenes and speeches, and I'm going to hopefully not too much, but have a little bit of commentary on the side. We have a little exploration. As it happened, we did a little workshop with the players, which many of our audience know are the actors who go around all the schools and deliver all our education programs. And James and I were working with the players ages ago on a very early draft of this show, In a Nutshell, it's called. And I had my daughter with me. It must have been school holidays, I think, unless maybe it was even lockdown last year. And we were doing a whole bunch of scenes. At the end of it, we were driving home, and I said to her, she's 5 years old, I said, do you know what we were doing? We were trying to work out how to make a play. We were trying to work out what would be in a play that I'm trying to write. And she said, oh, yes, I knew what you were doing. And I said, what, darling? And she said, you were asking, what is love? And I thought, okay, I didn't know that's what I was doing, but maybe that's what we're doing. Which was fascinating. I wasn't even sure that she was listening. She seemed to be doing a drawing. So maybe that's going to be the engine. And as this last year's gone on, I think maybe even more so, this could be a bit of an engine for the show. And as I say, rather flippantly, there's so much material we could choose from that it needs a little bit of a focus. So maybe they'll be mostly love scenes.
That's so great. What a beautiful comment. Such a simple and profound comment from Evie. You were trying to find out what love is. And that could be the description of Shakespeare's work. He's trying to get to the bottom of what love is. And for all of the shows that we're doing in 2022, I think that's a pretty good byline. We're trying to figure out what love is in a nutshell to launch the Nielsen Nutshell at Pier 23 in April. Don't miss it. Now, Peter, we definitely need a comedy in 2022, and you have programmed one. Tell us about that.
Yes, so this is one of the ones, Janine was alluding to it earlier. This is one of the ones that we were planning on doing in 2020. I'm going to get my years mixed up. Last year, and was a casualty, really, but as a perennial favourite, and we're going to do the Comedy of Errors. I've been speaking to Janine about it for a long time. Janine's obviously done a lot of work with us in almost all facets of the company, and has been an actor and an assistant director with me over many years. So we were looking for a project, and I really felt like it was time to do this play again. It's very beautiful, and Janine also loves the play. So I'll hand straight to Janine to talk more about it, but we kind of really fixed on this, and it was a casualty of 2020, but I'm really delighted that it's actually part of this next year, Janine. It hasn't lost any of its relevance, has it?
Oh, I think it's gained it, actually. I think it's gained relevance. I sort of, just hearing Harriet, I'll just jump in and say, just hearing Harriet do that beautiful speech that you just did, it just occurs to me that at this point, and for the performing arts and for live performance in general, coming back on stage feels a bit like a revolutionary act. It feels like it feels quite scary, and the anticipation of being able to work and perform feels exciting, but there's a fear to it because we've also been sidelined as an industry, you know, in a way that is, you know, that puts us a bit on the outer. So coming back, you start to feel like you can have a voice again. And I think with Comedy of Errors, it seems like quite a light play, you know, it seems like, and kind of a lightweight offering in a lot of contexts. But when Pete and I first talked about this, the thing that stood out to both of us was that it's actually about reunion and families being able to find each other again after being estranged for a long time. And I don't know about, I'm sure that everybody can relate to this, but not being able to see people even for 3 months and then not knowing how long that will be, it's a heart-wrenching proposition. And this play proposes that the families have been estranged since these 2 sets of twins and siblings were babies, and now they're grown humans, and they're finally trying to come back together, and they're on the same territory and the same terrain for the first time in decades. So that, to me, I feel like we can bring even more potency to that. It feels more potent. I've been away from my family in Melbourne for 3 months, and even just talking about the fact I might sing again brings a lump to my throat. So I think just the concept of the play's heart is reunion, and then everything around it is outrageous and silly and really funny.
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple of Shakespeare's great clowns in there, the Dromio twins, and you, Janine, are a director who loves to work physically, and I'm sure this is going to be a very physical, wild production.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about those Dromio twins?
Well, for me, they are the most outrageous and silliest clowns in the show. They get all the real good bits in terms of, you know, set up and, you know, set up for the audience, and they get the real farce, if farce was a thing back then. You know, they are set up to be those twins, the ones that are beaten down and get back up again, you know. And there's one of them is more of an angry clown, you know, and they've channeled their grief and their hurt and their loss into anger and kind of mimicking their boss in not great behavior. And the other one is truly a kind of love clown. Like they're just, you know, they get beaten down and get back up and still love their boss. And like they're so there's for me, the two of them about finding, they don't know at the start of the play that they're missing each other. The other two do, but they don't. And so they are taken truly shook when they find each other again. And I'm sort of looking to have 2 women in those roles, to take those 2 roles, 2 beautifully physical actors who will bring that comic duo to life, and look for the chemistry between siblings. You know, I think that, and we've talked about this before, Pete, about how, you know, there's a 12th night element to Comedy of Errors in the seeking of the twins and things like that. And the sibling relationship, I think, is a truly deep, intimate, loving relationship that isn't often explored on stage, the life between siblings. And actually you get a bit of it with Laertes and Ophelia, you know, there's that kind of relationship across Shakespeare. But yeah, that's why I'm digging into those 2 as the heart of the play.
It is going to be a fun, wild and moving night in the theatre, I think. Sydney, Melbourne, Canberra, Perth and other towns around Australia from July. 83 performances of that show on the road. Can't wait. Now, Peter, back by popular demand, the founder of Bell Shakespeare, he did a one-man show last year and people loved it. They couldn't get enough of it. So you're bringing John Bell back.
Yes, well, we have to, absolutely have to. As I mentioned earlier, you know, it's been a dream of his, what Pier 2-3 is going to be. And unfortunately, we knew, I remember him saying to me in about 2013, I think I remember, we're in the back of a taxi going to some event, and he said, I just don't think I'm going to be here when we get this venue. But, you know, it was not miles away at that point. And so this has worked out rather perfectly, is that when we were first locked down in 2020, we recorded 20 minutes of the show, One Man in His Time. And in collaboration with the Opera House, we released that, and it was just beautiful. And we did it in the empty Joan Sutherland Theatre. It was really cool. It was a cool thing. And then we got to do it this year in a small window when we got to actually perform in Canberra and in Sydney, and it just took off, and people absolutely loved it.
Yep.
And so it feels like we need to do it in the Nielsen nutshell, and John needs to have his own moment in that theatre. And what we found people going from Sydney to Canberra to see it for a second time,
see it again,
because it's profound, this piece that he does. And as Janine's talking, I was reflecting in a funny way that the aspect that Janine's really bringing out of, as she says, that a farce in Comedy of Errors, that thing of reunion, is really something we associate with the later plays of Shakespeare, the romances.
Yes.
And John talks about that in his show, that when we get into these last 4 or 5 plays, they are about forgiveness, and they are about reunions, and there's kind of tying in there that I think is really interesting for our audience who's looking at these different plays from different eras. And in a sense, we've got this early play in Comedy of Errors, and then a play right in the middle of Shakespeare's career with Hamlet, and then John covers some of the later work, which maybe that can be one of the things we talk about in a nutshell also, is the way these themes kind of return and get more focused as Shakespeare's career goes on. So I'm thrilled to have John in the Nielsen nutshell doing his thing, and I'm sure that's going to be another little sellout event, and it's going to be beautiful.
Yeah, no doubt. And it travels to Melbourne as well in September. One Man in His Time. Now, Peter, because we're in this new venue, you have programmed just a raft of new activity. A really exciting, delicious smorgasbord, I would say, of talks and panels and events. Can you tell us a little bit about some of those?
Yeah, so this is the advantage. I mean, I'm not going to take credit or actually responsibility for a lot of this. A lot of that rests on you, James Evans, and on Deborah and Jill and lots of our colleagues, because we've just had too many ideas, because finally we've got space. We've got these 2 rehearsal rooms. The Seed, we should mention, is the second rehearsal room, which is really a dedicated education space that Joanna Erskine, our head of education, has all sorts of ideas about. In fact, we have the Wonderful World of Will as one of the things that we're doing, which is finally we can do a family show in the Seed, which is a show that we sometimes take around to schools, and every time we do, people are like, "Oh, I'd love to be able to, bring my parents or bring my grandparents," and so that finally we're going to be able to do that. We're continuing the play readings that we started in our rehearsal room the start of this year, that Charles and Kim, the Cartwright literal combination, has given us, which is Play in a Day. And we're continuing our look at Middleton. We're going to do The Changeling. And we're doing also looking at Johnson. We're going to do a reading of The Alchemist, which I'm really excited about. So we're sort of doing plays. We did do The Alchemist about 15 years ago, but plays that potentially could speak to as Shakespeare contemporaries. We have actors in a room just for one day with the director, and then they read it that night. The energy that comes off those actors, and to hear these often not performed plays, I think is really exciting. So we've got 2 of those again next year. And then we've got this thing that I think you named it, Jimmy, Shakespeare Unpacked, which is an umbrella term for a bunch of things we're doing. Do you want to join me talking about some of this? Because what we're doing here, which is really the format of your beautiful podcast, Speak the Speech, you're going to do some live things, yes?
Yeah, we're going to do a couple of live episodes of Speak the Speech in Sydney and Melbourne. We're going to do a panel discussion, which I'm calling "Is Shakespeare an Optimist?" and talk about get some Shakespeare people in a room and talk about whether Shakespeare is more of a dystopian playwright or the opposite, the utopian playwright. We're going to talk about power and gender in Shakespeare, and we have amazing panel who's going to talk about that and really pull apart power structures in Shakespeare's plays and relate them to our modern day. And we've got the Sonnets and Semyon, which we do with our great partner Tyrrell's Wines. Bruce Tyrrell, a winemaker of great note who can really spin a tale, is going to be there with some of our actors reciting sonnets that we match to Tyrrell's Wines. It's a great
brilliant
note. The audience really loves that. So you got to get your ticket. These things sell out pretty quickly, so you got to get your tickets for those. And now something completely new for Bell Shakespeare. Peter, you've never programmed anything like this before, but you said that after you heard just a little bit of this music in just a workshop setting, you knew that this had to be a Bell Shakespeare show. Tell us about it.
Yeah, that's right, Jim Bob. So I think this might be the kind of greatest silver lining out of the pandemic, actually. It was in 2020, we'd just shut Hamlet down after 12 performances. And Laura across town was doing a workshop of her new musical called The Lovers. I didn't go to it live, but Emily, our colleague who works very closely with me, went and kind of came back and said, I think you might dig this. I think this could be good. There'll be a Vimeo a recording of it available. And she flicked it on to me. And it did. I think I got to the second song. I think I got to, it's based on Midsummer Night's Dream, and it was a song that Hermia sings to her father, actually. And I got really choked up by it. And I texted, as I was watching it, I texted Jill and Jimmy and lots of the senior managers and said, I think I've found a musical that we need to do. And so then we got hold of Laura and we campaigned, actually. I'll be quite open about it, that I pitched for it, and I proved to her that Bell Shakespeare was the rightful home for this work. We haven't done something like this before, but it feels exactly what we should do, and I feel like I've been searching for something like this for years. So I couldn't be more excited for Laura Murphy's The Lovers. Can you tell us a bit about the origins of it, Laura? It's super exciting for Bell Shakespeare.
Well, I'm super excited as well to be partnering with Bell Shakespeare. It feels like the perfect home for this story. Yeah, I mean, I've been writing this for about 10 years. It's been quite a while of, as your daughter actually said, of figuring out love. That's what I'm doing. And so I'm using this story and particularly the four lovers in this story as the springboard to explore all of that, explore love, explore romantic relationships, explore our ideas around that, the traditional narratives of that, what we tell each other about what the perfect relationship is or what true love is. And so I've just, as I've been working out over these years, I've just found new layers. I've found new things. I've found new things about myself and who I might be in a relationship, or who I have been in a relationship. I mean, we've all been Helena that was in the friend zone and was not loved back, or we've all been Demetrius, like being a bit emotionally unavailable, or we've all been Lysander, who's like super protective and a bit possessive and just wants to fix everything. We've all been, especially when we're trying to figure out love and we're trying to figure out how to do it, really. So that's what I really want to explore, which is why I focused in on those four characters and Oberon and Puck, who of course come in and meddle with all the magic. And I wanted to use music as a vehicle for all of that storytelling, particularly because I wanted to retell the story and reimagine it through a very contemporary lens to really speak to us all now. We now, the time of The Bachelor and Tinder and it feels like this story needs to be retold with these new perspectives, and for us to collectively figure out love again with all of these changes. And now particularly, I mean, human connection is like 1.5 meters apart, and you know, you swipe through and your perfect match is just one swipe away, and it's all changed so much, especially after the pandemic and being locked down. So just like we've been talking about, it's more relevant than ever. I mean, he just keeps giving, doesn't he, Shakespeare? You really got it right. 400 years later, and we're still finding new things.
No doubt.
And so it's been a real joy to continue developing this. And now, you know, we're ready to go. We're doing a big 2-week workshop of it soon. And getting it up on the floor with our fantastic director, Sean Rennie, with the help of course, Pete Evans. And we're just so ready to get it up on the floor and get some actors to sink their teeth into it.
I think one of the things that we were taking with James was that actually there's a lot of Shakespeare in it, that Laura's left kind of most of the big scenes of the lovers are all still there.
And then integrated it so perfectly with her brilliantly clever lyrics. And let me say, the catchiest songs that I have heard in a long, I don't know how you do it. Each one of them just lodges, and you're humming it and singing it days afterwards and reflecting on it and thinking about it. It's just so clever. Laura, would you be so kind? Would you mind singing us one of your numbers from The Lovers?
I would love to. So this one, Oberon sings this, and in my version, he's just seen Helena, who's sung her "How Happy Some Others Can Be" song, where she basically is like, "I love him, he doesn't love me back, but I'm going to get him." And Oberon sees this and sings the song. Do you remember a time when we didn't have to swipe right? We fell in love at first sight, but it lasted more than one night. Do you remember a time where there were fewer complications? We felt the same infatuation, but with lower expectations. Well, times are changing and I can't keep up. I guess I can't get enough of that old-fashioned love. I was so close to giving up, but then I look into her eyes and pleasantly surprised. I realize the kids are still down to love. In a world that's DTF, there might be some heart left. The kids are still down to love. RUDTL. She just wants to adore him, live her life with and for him. When the world breaks him down, she'll do all she can to restore him. What more is he looking for? She may seem all too eager, but I think she's a keeper. I have the magic touch to change the way that he perceives her. I believe her when she says that he's the one. Isn't it lovely? The kids are still down to love. The kids are still down to love. The kids are still down to love.
So great.
My God, that is brilliant.
It's so great, isn't it?
That is just so beautiful.
It is beautiful.
I'm like moved. I have the tears.
It's going to be a joyous, moving, beautiful show. Sydney in October, November, and then the world, right, Peter? Yeah. I mean, this is huge. This is going to be.
I think so. I think you want to get in. I think you want to be there when at the first time, because I think this is going to be around for a long, long time. I think it's very special. I'm very ambitious for it. I think it's a very special work, and that's just one of, there's so many songs in it, and they're all incredibly moving. It's the heart inside the piece and what it says, not just for young people, but obviously it is about young people, but I think all of us is really special. I'm super excited.
Love it. Well, Laura, Harriet, Peter, Janine, thank you so much for joining us for the season 22 launch. It is so exciting. We're going to be in real theaters doing real live shows. Let's recap what's going on with Bell Shakespeare next year. Hamlet, Sydney and Melbourne, and Canberra, March to May. In a nutshell, in our brand new home, Pier 2-3, the Nielsen Nutshell in April. The Comedy of Errors playing Melbourne, Sydney, Canberra, and other locations around the country from July. One Man in His Time, John Bell, one-man show in Sydney and Melbourne in September. The Lovers, Laura Murphy's fantastic new musical in Sydney in October and November. Packages now on sale on our website for Sydney, Melbourne, and Canberra performances. There are a range of season package options available, and when you book a package of 2 or more productions, you can save up to 22% off the single ticket prices and get special priority access to our events like Play in a Day and Shakespeare Unpacked. So head to bellshakespeare.com.au for more details and to book a 2022 package. Just before we sign off, I've got to say thank you to our wonderful donors and partners who continue to make our performances and programs possible. So many of you have stuck with us through these challenging 2 years, and I want to acknowledge that. In particular, our Hamlet season partner, La Trobe Financial, our production patron, the Lowe Family Foundation, and of course, the Nielsen Foundation, who named our new studio theatre at Pier 2-3. Thank you, one and all of our supporters, and we will see you in the theatre next year. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.